Hit record. All right. Just a couple of logistical things before we get started. First of all, to ask a question, like I said, feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable being on the recording, or just write your message into the chat. You can use the raise hand function in Zoom whenever you are prompted. So there will be times throughout the demonstration when I'll say, did everybody successfully complete whatever instruction we had just done as part of the demonstration? And I'll ask everyone to please raise their hands so that I know that I can move on to the next portion. So if we could just practice that right now really quickly. Please press the go to your reaction emojis and do the hand raise emoji so that, yes, just like that. Wonderful. And so feel free to use the hand raise emoji to alert me to anything, and I'll try to address it. It'll be, of course, easier once our teaching assistant joins us. I apologize if I'm a little bit slow to notice questions in the chat or hands raised before the TAs are able to join us, but I'll try to make sure that I'm keeping track of that. And so you guys can all unraise your hands now, so we can move on with the rest of today's workshop. So really quickly, first of all, let me recap what it is that we're going to be working on today and the rest of the week. So today is the first day where we'll be focusing on our hands-on demonstration of Terra, which is a platform for running bioinformatic tools in the cloud. It's a very user-friendly interface, and I'm going to be walking everybody through a little bit of a platform tour, followed by a simple toy example, just to familiarize everybody with how workflows are configured and launched. And then on day 2, you will see an introduction to the use of Docker and Docker Hub. I do recommend by then that you have completed some of the pre-workshop steps in terms of registering your Docker Hub account and having your Docker desktop installed so that you don't run into any problems. And so on day 2, you'll learn something about best practices when using Docker images and how to run WDL workflow scripts. On day 3, we're going to learn about WDL as a language itself. So you'll learn the basics of WDL syntax. We'll run a simple hello world example so that you can see how to stage a WDL script once it's written. And in general, you get kind of the basic concepts of using WDL in the cloud. And finally, on day 4, we're going to learn all about automating Dockstore and GitHub integration so that you can see how all of these pieces fit together in a larger industrial workflow. So back to today, what you're going to be learning about is Terra. We're going to learn about what Terra is, why it's a cloud-based system. We're going to learn how Terra facilitates the organization of data, as well as tools and other types of computational resources. You're going to get kind of a brief introduction into how WDL scripts are staged in Terra, and we're going to show you lots of places where you can find other example resources and various support resources to help get you started. So before we dive into the big question of what is Terra and why does it exist, we'd like to start with this little icebreaker exercise. Terra, as I mentioned, is a cloud-based platform. This is kind of a new motif of work for a lot of people. For some people, it is not new at all, and they, in fact, are even more experienced than a lot of the instructors of our boot camps in terms of using cloud-based bioinformatic resources. So we like to find out what proportion our audience falls into. So if everyone wouldn't mind typing a number into the chat, 1, 2, or 3, just to let me know how comfortable you are using cloud resources. I see lots and lots of 2s. Lots of 2s, a few 3s, a couple of 1s, and some 1.5s. I've never seen a 1.5, so thank you for such a thoughtful answer. So that's wonderful. That means I think that everyone here, or almost everyone here, is going to be very receptive to the motivation behind why Terra exists. You'll understand exactly why we built it the way that we did. And if you don't, please feel free to pipe up with any questions you have about, well, why is this like this? What are the advantages? Especially if you're right now in the midst of trying to decide whether a cloud-based platform is something that you want to switch over from on-prem or even local work. All right, so without further ado, let's start talking about what Terra is. So before we talk about exactly how Terra is constructed, let's talk a little bit about what the motivation is for the creation of Terra. So first of all, over the past 20 years, now 25 years, there's been a massive generation of data in a variety of projects, starting, of course, with the Human Genome Project. And since then, there have been a variety of other projects that have expanded enormously on the genomic data that's available, on phenotypic data that's available, and of course, on all of the tools that proliferate in order to analyze all of these data. So in order to handle this vast and growing set of data, we have created a platform that gets around a lot of the obstacles that researchers face when they're trying to deal with the complexity of the tools, with the complexity of versioning, with the complexity of security considerations, with the complexity of sharing their analyses with their colleagues. And all of these functions in Terra are facilitated largely by the fact that it is a cloud-based platform. Now, why is that? In order to understand why that is, let's first talk a little bit about what the traditional approach to big data science like this has been. So in the traditional approach, we've always had a system where the data is brought to the researchers, right? The researchers can perhaps log into some sort of secure server, and then they'll download the data, and then they will be the stewards of the data that is important to their research. Of course, there are a number of weaknesses in this approach. First and foremost, of course, it's not a terribly secure approach. In this kind of approach, every individual researcher becomes potentially the weakest link in the chain. They have to make sure that the data that they're holding on to is properly stewarded in terms of all of the regulations that might apply to it. And on top of that, there's a massive infrastructural disadvantage to this approach because, again, instead of sharing data, rather than having true data sharing, we're just doing data copying. So we're actually just creating a massive number of additional copies of data that is already quite large. And so in addition to those, of course, there are a number of problems with sharing, with versioning. If I download a piece of data, now I have to make sure down the line when I'm sharing my downstream analyses with my colleagues or even in peer review, I have to make sure that the data that I used for my research is harmonized with whatever is the newest version that others might need in order to reproduce the research that I've just created. So this is just kind of a cross-section of all of the pain points of the traditional approach. And so the cloud-centric approach is really meant to turn all of this around in order to erase a lot of these pain points. So in the cloud-centric approach, we have true data sharing, where instead of having researchers come to the data and make copies of that data and then go ahead and leave with that data kind of in their own pockets, now we have true data sharing in the sense that we have a centralized place in the cloud where the data lives, and researchers are just granted access to that data where it is. And they work with that data within the secured perimeter in our cloud system. And so this means that individual researchers no longer have to worry about making sure that their own system is secure, because the security is taken care of by our platform. They're able to save a lot on infrastructural costs, because now they don't have to worry quite so much about all of the storage. I mean, it's not that it's not a concern at all. You'll see as we go through the platform tour where the costs that you're incurring just from storage are surfaced. But now you won't be responsible for the storage of lots of different versions. The versioning is kind of taken care of for you by the platform. Another huge advantage of using a platform like ours is that cloud-based systems are non-trivial to set up. It's not quite so simple to create a system like the one that I'll be showing you today. Even if you're a cloud expert, there's a lot that goes into making sure that you're covering all of the security basics, all of the data integration, that you've created a way for collaborators to all seamlessly look at their analyses together, that you've mounted all of the tools in a way that actually functions and the versioning is functional. And so because clouds are hard to use out of the box, we've created this platform in order to make sure that this part is kind of done for you. So with Terra, it is all out of the box. And so that's what Terra exists for. So it was developed in collaboration with Microsoft and Verily. And we'll see today how you use this user interface. But in short, it's supposed to make all of these pain points very simple and very smooth through a friendly user interface. And it does this by making sure that all of the core capabilities that you need in order to complete your research are in place within the platform. So that means that Terra has actually integrated a lot of data sets directly into the platform. So it's very easy with the data sets that have been integrated to just grab that data using your secure login from one portion of the platform and make sure that it's reflected in your own workspaces so that you can point your workflows and your analyses directly at these data. And you'll see how many data sets we have already integrated into the platform. And that includes both public access and access controlled data sets. So we've integrated a lot of secure login systems in order to make sure that you're able to use these data sets through the platform without having to kind of go out in different places and make sure that your access is all set up. In addition to the integration of the data resources, there's a number of tool resources that includes the workspaces that you'll learn all about in today's demonstration. And the workspaces are basically places where you can organize all of the metadata that's relevant to a particular project. You can organize all of the tools, whether they be batch workflow tools or downstream interactive analysis tools in the form of Jupyter notebooks. Yeah, so you'll see how all of that works in Terra today. And in general, Terra is supposed to function as a hub within the cloud data ecosystem. So Terra integrates research consortia, user portals, various data repositories, tool repositories, where you can find all of the things that you need in order to put together whatever analysis you're interested in. And of course, one of the most important things that we like to emphasize is that Terra is built to work with highly sensitive data. This includes protected data that is mentioned in these FISMA and FedRAMP certifications that we have. So we're FISMA and FedRAMP moderate. And I know that there are a lot of, often there are a lot of kind of more detailed questions about what exactly that means for, individuals' research. So like, what does that mean for protected health information? And the answer is actually kind of case by case. We have lots of information in our support documentation on the terms of service, on Terra's security posture. And so it's kind of a longer question. If you really want to address it, please let us know. You can either let us know in the chat later on towards the end of the workshop if you have any specific questions about data sensitivity, or you can always send an email to either support@terra.bio, or if your question is kind of more about what you saw during a workshop, you can feel free to send the email to dsp-workshops@broadinstitute.org. And so, like I said, in all of these slides, you're going to find, in all of these slide decks, you're going to find a variety of links. Some of them are specific to today's workshop. Some of them are just links to general resources that will help you get started on your journey, wherever that journey may start. There's lots of resources for quick starts. There's lots of tutorials, and you can find a lot of these links at the end of this slide deck. You'll also see where in the user interface a lot of these support resources are linked out during the platform tour, which we'll go into in a moment. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get started with the platform tour, which is kind of like halfway a hands-on demonstration. You don't have to follow along with this part if you don't want to, in order to be able to do the hands-on exercises that come after this, but feel free to follow along. Before I go into the platform to do the tour, I want to pause and ask if anyone has any questions. I'm just going to give everybody a moment to think about it. Let me know if you have any questions about Terra in general, or how it's used. I see in the chat there's a question about price. So you'll see, I'll show you during the both the platform tour and during the hands-on exercises where you can see various types of real-time cost estimations, as well as where you can see reports on how much you have spent. In general, I should say that we aren't able, as a platform, to provide quotes to people. We can't estimate for you how much your work will cost, because we don't know anything about the science of the people who are coming to the platform. We only know about the tools that we're in charge of. And so our best practice advice to people, and we have a lot of documentation about these best practices, is to create your own cost estimation. We have some strategies to help you do this. basically by running downscaled versions of the workflows that you're interested in, and then you can kind of calculate what the upscaled cost should be. All right. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the platform exercise, to the platform tour. And so I have here on this slide the first exercise, which is kind of the second half of the platform tour. So I'm going to first move over to terra.bio and just show everybody the landing page, some of the other pages that are just generically associated with everyone's profile. And then we're going to go look at a specific featured workspace just so we can show you all what a workspace actually looks like, what the different sections of the workspace are supposed to do. And that's going to be this COVID-19 workspace. So you can use this slide to help you find the workspace, or you can also just follow along with me on the screen. I will also help you find the workspace. So first of all, let me just make sure I am sharing the right screen. Is everyone now able to see the landing page of Terra? So you should be able to see on my shared screen app.terra.bio, the landing page for Terra. Raise your hand if you see it. Awesome, fabulous, thank you. Just wanted to be sure. All right, wonderful. You all can put your hands down. So let's get started with the platform tour. So here we are on the landing page of Terra. The URL is app.terra.bio. So go ahead and navigate to app.terra.bio if you want to follow along with me. You should also go ahead and log in. If you aren't already, then you should do that by pressing this main menu button at the top left. And here where you see my name, if you haven't logged in yet, you should see an option to use a Google login. So you should go ahead and do that. And if you haven't yet registered for Terra, you should be able to do that also using that same button. It should be a couple of extra clicks. Even if you haven't registered yet, it should take you about 30 seconds to do it. Please make sure that you use the same email address for registering for this as for basically everything else in the workshop. That will make it much faster and smoother later on when we're trying to integrate all of the different tools. And by the way, if you haven't yet done that, then you might not have been added to the billing project in order to do today's and several subsequent hands-on exercises. If you haven't been added yet, that's fine. Please just let me know. You can drop me a direct message with the email address that you used to register for Terra, and I will add that to the billing project. Okay, so here we are on the landing page, and what I'm first going to do is just take everybody through what you can find in this main menu. So under the main menu, under your name, you'll find some useful information about your own account. So first of all, under profile, you'll be able to find information about your profile, including some information that might be useful for different types of programmatic workflows that you might want to set up, for example, your proxy group. We won't be doing anything complicated like that today, so you won't need that today. But in the future, if you're going through our support documentation, trying to figure out how to set different things up, and you see you need to find your FireCloud proxy group, then this is where you would find it. In addition to that, under your profile, you can find all of your external identities. These are authentications for various secure data sets outside of Terra. So if you have identities with NIH or with the CRDC or with Kids First, for example, you want to access controlled access data, all you have to do is come to this portion of your profile and use whatever login you have for those systems. And then your Terra account will be authenticated in order to be able to use these integrated data. In addition to that, you'll find notification settings here. These are already set for you by default, so you don't need to worry about them too much. But there's lots of useful notifications in here that you can play around with. You can make sure that you're getting notifications whenever your workflows are submitted or when they complete. This can be especially useful for people who set up their workflows to run programmatically so that they're always aware of what's exactly going on with their workspaces. And so, yeah, that's what you can find under your profile. Just one moment. I saw there might be a question in the chat. Ah, I see. Yes, we'll take care of adding you to a billing project as soon as we have a short break. Okay. In addition to what you'll find under your profile, you'll find information about groups that you belong to. So no one here should belong to a group at the moment, but this is a useful feature for security purposes. So the way that these managed groups work is very similar to how a security badge works in a secure facility. So I'll show you also when we're creating a workspace how to make sure that that workspace is protected by one of these groups, but we won't actually use this access control, but that's what it's there for. This is an access control where you can create groups, you can add users into those groups so that those users are approved to work within whatever authorization domain you add to your workspaces. So when you're creating a new workspace, you can do something called authorization domain protection, where you add an authorization domain to that workspace, and that authorization domain corresponds to one of these groups. And so then only people who are within that group will be able to access that workspace. So this is a security feature. Then below that, you can find billing. So if I click here, you'll see I have lots and lots of billing projects. Everyone here should probably have either one, or maybe if you've already had some experience with Terra, you'll have a little bit more than one. But everyone here should already have at least one workspace, or at least one billing project shared with them. And that should be the WDL Bootcamp March 2025 billing project that I mentioned. So if you go under your billing projects and you don't see that, then go ahead and send me the message. I see a couple of people have already sent me a message to make sure that they're added. So those folks should go to their billing and make sure that they aren't already on there. And if they're not, then about halfway through this presentation, I'll take a moment to add people who haven't yet been added. In addition to that, under here, you'll be able to see a list of the cloud environments that you're running for interactive analysis. This might not be quite clear at the moment what that refers to, but it will become clear as we go through the presentation. So just as a kind of a preliminary sneak peek, what you see on this page is a list of interactive analysis cloud environments that I have spun up in the past, in addition to the persistent disks associated with each one of those cloud environments. So when you create an interactive analysis cloud environment for either a Jupyter Notebook or an RStudio session or a Galaxy session, you will also at the same time create a separate storage location for that machine, and you can basically track those resources here on this page. So if you want to have kind of a one-stop shop place to go and see how many different notebooks you have going, how many different notebook persistent disks are currently in existence, this is where you would come. And it's also a good place to control costs, because this is also a one-stop shop for getting rid of all of the cloud environments and the persistent disks. And you can see here in answer to one of the questions about estimating costs. This is one of the places where you can find exactly how much you are spending regularly on these cloud environments. So I have a bunch of cloud environments here that are paused, and because they're paused, they only cost about 1 cent per hour. So that's what I'm accruing right now. And then the storage locations for each of those are also running me about $2 per month. Okay, in addition to that, there's a number of other useful things on this menu. I'm going to skip over this Workspaces button because it's the last thing that I'm going to click on in this view, because it's going to take us to a whole nother page, and from that page we'll jump into the rest of the demonstration. So before we go to that, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the data library. So in the library, we have actually 3 separate sections. We have a section for the data sets. So here, if I click on our data set library, it'll take a moment to load. And actually, you can see our data sets in one of 2 ways. You can see our new data catalog format for these data that allows you to search across all of the data sets for whatever you like, basically. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I like to turn off the new catalog view just so that we can see all of the data sets that are currently available. So here they are. And you'll notice that under every data set, there's a button that says Browse Data. And so these are the data sets that have already been integrated into the Terra ecosystem. So you'll be able to grab data directly from these data sets and send the metadata that points to those data into your workspaces. So you'll be able to point your workflows directly at those data. You'll have whatever security integration you need in order to be able to run workflows against those data without having to make copies or do any of that difficult step. One other thing we like to point out during these demonstrations is that there are several different ways in which these data sets can be integrated. So when you click on these buttons, you will have a different experience depending on which data set is actually relevant to you. In some cases, the button will link out to a completely separate platform where you'll have to go through their authentication, and usually within those platforms, once you've selected data, you'll find a button for sending that data back to Terra, to your workspace. In some of the cases, when you click the button, you'll be taken to a publicly facing workspace, and you'll be able to select metadata from within that workspace and send it to your own workspaces. And in some cases, you'll see something that looks more like a data explorer. So this MPD workspace is an example of a data delivery workspace where you're taken just to a publicly facing workspace, and you can find things like workflows and data and analyses, and you can find all of the information for how to use this data delivery workspace in the dashboard. Or sometimes you will find that you'll see what we call a data explorer. So in the case of this 1,000 genomes data set, We have this integrated data explorer. You can see this data explorer currently contains access to about 3,500 participants. So if I were interested in whittling down this cohort and creating some kind of a customized cohort for my own research interests, I might make some selections around here. Let's say I was only particularly interested in specific populations. I could select that. You can see I've whittled down from 3,500 participants down to about 1,000. I can whittle that even further. Maybe I'm only interested in certain types of samples. So there you go. I have even fewer now. I have 250 participants. And now I can save this cohort. I can give it a name. And if I were to do that, then in the next modal, it would then ask me what workspace I'd like to send this to. And then I could do that. So that's how the data library works. In addition to the data library, we also have a number of featured workspaces. These workspaces are ones that we curate internally. So we make sure that they're tested and up to date. We also make sure that they contain all of the context and instructional information within their dashboards so that you're able to use the resources that are contained within these featured workspaces. You can search right here for whatever topic you might be interested in. You can also just look through these filters on the left. So we have lots of workspaces on a variety of topics. We have, of course, some useful workspaces for people who are just getting started using Terra. So they can go through some tutorials about how to use workflows and notebooks. They can use workspaces that we have compiling different tools like Jupyter Notebooks. We have some workspaces for folks who want to use Hail, want to use Bioconductor. And of course, we have a number of categories that are dedicated to either specific scientific disciplines or specific styles of analyses. So you can find basically anything you can imagine here in our featured workspaces. And finally, we also have a repository for workflows. Actually, we've integrated access to two different repositories, both DocStore and the Terra Workflow repository are places where you can go to grab workflows and send them directly to your workspace, where you can then point those workflows at data that is contained in your workspaces. And if that sounds confusing at all, that is what our demonstration today is going to be all about. We're going to go through kind of a very simple toy example where we'll point some workflows at the data in the data tab of a workspace. So you'll see how within a workspace, if you have workflows, if you have data, you can just connect them to one another and move on with your work. In addition to that, there's lots of useful information that you can access through this menu. There's platform news where you can see the Terra roadmap if you're interested in where this platform is going in the near future. You can also submit a feature request. So if you find that you are liking Terra, but there is some very simple pain point that you wish there was one simple button that would allow you to do something quickly instead of having to kind of monotonously do the same thing over and over for maybe a large list of things, feel free to submit a feature request. And our engineers are very enthusiastic about providing users with the experience they most want. And finally, in addition to that, there's a number of support resources that you can access from this menu. I won't go into the details. There's a lot of different support resources. We have a very deep support site full of documentation. We have videos on our YouTube channel. We have lots of step-by-step tutorials. We have troubleshooting guides. And of course, there's also a community forum where you can interact with both other users and our frontline support team. So with that, we can move on to the portion of this tour that talks about workspaces. So I'm going to go ahead and click on workspaces. It's going to take a second for my workspaces page to load because I have access to lots of workspaces. Oh, there it goes. So if you are following along right now and you are at your workspaces page, you'll probably see way fewer workspaces. And what we're actually going to do right now is search for a specific workspace that's publicly facing so that we can kind of finish out the first portion of the platform tour by seeing a kind of typical featured workspace. You'll notice here there are 3 tabs with 3 different lists. The first tab lists every workspace to which I have any kind of access, whether that be owner access or reader access. Of these 1,758 workspaces, a number of them are ones that I have the exact same type of access that everybody else in the world has, because some of them are public, and of the 300 some public workspaces, about 60 of them are also featured workspaces. And so the difference is really that featured workspaces are ones for which our department takes responsibility in order to make sure that they're up to date and curated, whereas public workspaces in general, we help to make sure that they adhere to a certain standard, but we actually allow users at large to request that their workspaces become public. So a lot of users like to create workspaces where they're able to share either data sets or specific tools, or if they just want to use those workspaces to share their analyses either with collaborators or for peer review, they're able to create public workspaces and then cite those public workspaces in their publications. And in that way, they can kind of publicly provide an end-to-end example of their research. So what we're going to do right now is look for a specific one of those. I'm just going to type the word COVID right here. I'm going to go to our featured workspaces, and I'm going to click on this top one right here. And so now we are looking at a workspace. So we're going to go through what all of these tabs are supposed to do, why do they exist, and basically how a workspace is structured. Excuse me. But before we move on to how a workspace is structured in general, I want to say a couple of things about the workspace that we're looking at right now. So first of all, it's important to note that we are looking at a public read-only version of this workspace. If I wanted to do stuff in this workspace, I would have to make a clone of the workspace, which is fine, and that's what we'll be doing with the demonstration workspace that we'll use for our hands-on demo today. But everyone should be aware that when you first land on a public workspace, you don't actually have access to anything other than viewing the information in here. If you want to be able to run things in a public workspace, you can't. You can't do it in a public workspace. You have to clone your own workspace. And so in order to do that, all you need to have is a billing project to your name. And I'll show everyone how to do that a couple of times today, but just so everyone knows, you can do it by clicking on this 3-dot button here and clicking this clone button. And when you do that, you'll see a modal asking you for some information about the workspace that you're trying to create. You'll have the option to select a billing project. And we're not going to do that with this particular workspace. We're going to do it with the next workspace that we look at, but that's how you would do it. And one of the ways that I know that this is a public workspace to which I have only read access is that I see this little symbol right here. So this workspace is read only, and if I were to clone it on my own, then a few things would happen. First of all, you will see that this symbol disappears, so it will no longer be a read-only workspace. If I clone it, then I'm an owner of that workspace. So my access level here would change from reader to owner. You'll also notice when we actually do this, up here you can see the name of the workspace, this COVID-19, but before the slash, you can see also what is actually the name of the billing project on which this workspace exists. So this workspace is, it's free for us to look at as members of the public, but of course it does cost money for the workspace to exist. It costs money for the workflows that exist in this workspace to be tested. They're automatically tested by our system on a regular basis. So all of that costs money, and that money is charged to a billing project called Pathogen Genomic Surveillance. So if I were to clone this on, say, a billing project like WDL Bootcamp March 2025, then what you'll see is that this path here will be replaced first by the name of the billing project that you've cloned the workspace on, and then with the unique name that you gave that workspace. Another important thing to understand that happens when you clone a workspace is that you create a completely new storage location for that workspace. So you can see here on the right of the dashboard, there's a card called Cloud Information. That card tells you what cloud this workspace is built on. So in this case, it's the Google Cloud. We have some workspaces built on the Azure Cloud. It tells you the location of the Google bucket that is associated with this workspace. It tells you the Google project ID and the bucket name, and it tells you how much is stored in that Google bucket. When you clone your own workspace, or when you create a workspace from scratch, you also create a fresh, empty Google bucket. And so one thing that you'll notice when you clone your own workspace is that the bucket name will change. There will be a new, unique storage location associated with just that workspace. And one thing that we like to point out is that that is not the only storage location associated with your workspace. There are actually two. And you won't actually see the persistent disk storage location showcased so much in this demonstration because we'll be focused on workflows rather than downstream interactive analyses. But it's important to understand that when you create a workspace, it gets its own workspace bucket. The workspace bucket is where workflow outputs are automatically sent to, which is separate from where the outputs of things that you do in an interactive analysis environment like a Jupyter Notebook go to. So if I were to spin up a Jupyter Notebook, it would get its own separate storage location, and I might have to send things between that storage location and other storage locations, such as my workspace bucket. So if I want, for example, to use an interactive analysis to explore downstream of my workflow analyses, of my batch analyses, then I would need to transfer the outputs of my workflows from my workspace bucket to my persistent disk that's associated with my Jupyter Notebook. So that gives you an idea of what you can find here on the right side of the dashboard and what happens when you create a new workspace. Once you understand that, then we can talk about what these separate tabs are actually meant to do. So first and foremost is the dashboard. The dashboard is where you land when you first go to a workspace. On the dashboard of a proper featured workspace, you'll find lots of information about whatever it is that that workspace is about. So you can find information about the consortia that are associated with the data in that workspace. You can find information about the workflow, including examples of inputs and outputs. You should hopefully be able to find information about the types of data that are either in that workspace or the types of data that the workflows contained in that workspace expect. And in many cases, you'll find documentation that gives you other best practice information about whatever that workspace is for. It will give you cost estimates for different workflows. It will give you provenance for workflows and data, etc. So that's what the dashboard is for. I will also note that we can't edit this dashboard because, again, this is a public read-only version. But once we clone our own workspaces, you'll see that you have full access to edit this whole field. And it's actually just one giant markdown field. So if you're familiar with the use of the markdown language, then you can basically put anything that you like in this field. You can put graphics and links and charts and tables. So that's what the dashboard is for. So let's move on to the Data tab. So in the Data tab of a workspace, you will find a few different sections. There is a tables section, a reference data section, and there is a section for other types of workspace data. So let's quickly talk about what it is that we find when we look at this. So if I click on one of the tables within my data tab, I'll find basically a giant TSV table with a bunch of metadata that refers to different patient samples. So we can see sample IDs and accession IDs, but in addition to flattened strings, such as the sample IDs and the assembly lengths, we also see a bunch of links to different files. And this is one of the most powerful aspects of Terra. The workspace allows you to point your workflows at your data in a systematic way that's organized by your data tab. So we'll see that in the hands-on demonstration, how exactly you point to the various pieces of data in your data table. But one thing that it's important to point out is that you'll see lots of links to files. And in some cases, these files do not exist in the bucket of the workspace that we're looking at. Specifically, that's the files that have these symbols next to them. So when I hover over this symbol, you see a message that says some files are located outside of the current workspace. And this is a part of the Terra functionality. So long as you have made sure to set up all of your authentications and you have the proper access to whatever data you're interested in, wherever it currently lives, you don't have to transfer that data from one location to another. You can just have metadata that points to it wherever it currently lives. So this is an example of, a very kind of a very deep data table. There's lots and lots of sample information, lots of links to various files. Terra also allows you to organize things into sample sets. This can be very useful for different types of scientific analyses, whether you're trying to run GWAS and you want to set up sets of specific samples, or if you're doing tumor normal pairs, then there's kind of a variety of ways in which Terra allows you to hook that up. And in addition to that, you can always use these two search bars to find information within this workspace about the various samples. So for example, I could search for this sample ID here, and it will show me exactly how many rows in either of these tables contain that particular sample ID. So that's a very nice feature. So that's what the tables in the data tab are for. In addition to these tables, which organize your metadata however you want, there is also a section for reference data. So if you want to add publicly available reference data, there's a number of popular references that you can select here. There's obviously HG38, there's some mouse reference data, fly reference data, everything you can imagine. And in addition to that, you can find your workspace data, which is where you can find data that is useful across different data tables and across different types of workflows. So in the case that you maybe want to be pointing at the exact same file for a number of different workflows, if it's maybe a reference file that is not one of the commonly available reference files, or if it's something like an intervals list, and you don't want to just have a whole separate column in one of your sample data tables that just points to the same file over and over and over, you can create a key value pair within your workspace data so that you can kind of more conveniently work with the same file over and over. So that's what the data tab is for. Moving on, in the analyses tab is where you'll find the interactive analyses for different types of downstream analysis that you might want to do. In most cases, what you'll find here are Jupyter Notebook files, but you are able to run RStudio through this as well as Galaxy. So we're not going to focus too much on Jupyter Notebooks in today's demonstration. We're just going to do workflows. But if you wanted to run a Jupyter Notebook, what you would do is spin up a cloud environment for yourself. Oop, I pressed the wrong button, excuse me. That's going to take a moment. What you would do is set up your custom cloud environment. Obviously, I won't have access to these settings in this public workspace, but I'll show everybody briefly what the settings look like when we clone our own workspace. And so that's how you create an interactive analysis environment for your Jupyter Notebooks or what have you. And within that, you will also be able to see a cost estimate for that particular cloud environment. So in this case, obviously we're spending $0 per hour because we don't actually have a cloud environment running. So I'll show everyone once we clone our own workspace what that might look like if you were actually running your own cloud environment. In the workflows section is where you will find the actual WDL-based workflows, and that's what we're going to focus on for today's demo. So we're not going to use this workspace to demonstrate how to use workflows. We're just going to take a quick look at what a workflow looks like, and then we're going to go over to the workspace with our toy example, and that's where we'll actually run workflows. So I'm going to describe this very briefly, and we'll go into more detail when we get to the hands-on portion. So in the workflow, you'll find, of course, the name of the workflow. You'll find a drop-down menu with the various available versions of that workflow. You'll find a link to the source at GitHub for the workflow, and you'll find a bunch of options for how to configure that workflow. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in today's demo. So I'll just I'll put a pin in that so that we can do it all together. And finally, the last thing that I'm going to show you in this workspace is the submission history. So this is actually a public workspace that does experience regular automated testing. So you can actually see the history of the submissions within this public workspace. If I were to clone this workspace, then the submission history would disappear because those submissions would no longer be associated with my freshly copied workspace. But within these submission histories, you can find details about how that workspace ran. You can go to the job manager and the execution directory to see things like standard outputs. You can find how much that total run cost, if you want to include that in your own attempts to do cost estimation. And you can find basically all of the things that you need in order to locate the outputs from that workflow submission. So I could click on this submission ID and it would take me to the location within my workspace bucket where the outputs for this workflow are contained. And the other way to find those outputs would be to use this button, which is our Browse Workspace Files button. And so when you click on this, you can see the actual workspace bucket. The workspace bucket contains a folder for all of the notebook files that exist in this workspace. So we saw in our Analyses tab there was one notebook, there was one IPyNB file, and here is where that IPyNB file lives. And in addition to that, we can see a list of the submissions that have been run in this workspace. So if I wanted to go to find any of the outputs that I created, this is where I could go. I can also find in the dashboard a link to the workspace bucket within the Google Cloud Console. So I can navigate around my workspace bucket either by leaving the Terra platform, or I can use this button to navigate around my workspace bucket. Okay, and that concludes our platform tour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to the workspace that we'll be using. You can find a link to this workspace in the slides, but also I will just show you how I can find it. I'm just going to go to my workspaces. I'm going to type in Quick Start. And I'm actually not going to use the featured version. I'm going to go into one of the publicly available versions. I'm going to go to this T101 Quick Start workspace. And again, you'll notice that we are inside of a read-only workspace. And so this is the part where we're going to get started with the hands-on exercise. So I'm going to show everybody how to clone a workspace, and I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and do it as well. And I'm going to take a moment to add anybody who sent me a direct message to the billing project so that you're able to do it. So this is kind of the first step that we all have to do if we're going to continue with the rest of the hands-on demo. So go ahead and do this. So once you have found this T101 Quick Start workspace, what you're going to do is click on the three-dot menu button in the top right, and you're going to select Clone. The first thing that we need to do when we're cloning our workspace is give it a unique name. It is important, especially in a workshop setting like this, that the name be unique because the name has to be unique across billing projects. And since we're all using the same billing project for this demonstration, we have to make sure that we don't have the exact same workspace name, or else there will be an error. So we recommend as a best practice that everybody names their workspace using things like initials and a timestamp for today's date. And you can write it in whatever format you like. If it so turns out that you have the exact same initials and the same timestamp format as somebody else, then you'll see an error. It will tell you somebody else is already using this this workspace name on this billing project. So just give it the most unique workspace name you can think of, and select the WDL Bootcamp March 2025 billing project. That's really all you have to do. From here, you can just click Clone Workspace. And in just a moment, I'll make sure that everybody is on the billing project. Before I do, I just want to point out that here you can edit the description of the workspace. You can also enable several security features. You can enable additional security monitoring so that there is an active log of everything that happens within that workspace, regardless of who does it. And this is also where you can add the authorization domain that I mentioned earlier. So if I wanted to protect this workspace behind kind of a security badge, then I would go to the groups section of my profile. I would create a group, and then I would add that group here. And then only people who are within that group would be able to then clone this workspace as well. So we're not going to do that. We don't need to do that for this demonstration. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what this was for. So I'm gonna hit cancel just so I can show everybody one more time, because again, this is one of those things that we all have to do, and if you've fallen behind, you won't be able to do the subsequent portions of the demo. So one last time, in the top right corner of your workspace, there's a 3-dot button, there's a clone option. Give your workspace copy a unique name. Select the billing project. And hit Clone Workspace. So while everybody's doing that, I'm going to stop sharing so that I can make sure that everyone is squared away with their billing project. I also see there's a question in the chat about the data library and how it's built on the back end. And I think the answer is actually case by case. I'm not aware to what degree Looker Studio is used or what APIs are used, but some of the data sets will be integrated via API. Some of them will be integrated in other ways. If you have a specific question about a particular data set, please let me know or send an email to support@terra.bio, and we'll make sure to figure it out for you. We're just going to pause here for a moment so that I can go ahead and add people. All right, that should be everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and go through the cloning procedure one more time, and then I'll ask everybody to raise their hands if they've succeeded. I see a question in the chat. What is the name of the workspace we should clone? The name of the workspace is T101 Quick Start, T101 underscore Quick Start. And you can find that. I'll show you again how to find it, but you can also find a link to it in the slides that are available in this public folder. So if you haven't yet clicked into the public folder, here's the link for that again. So in there, you'll find PDFs, clickable PDFs with all of the slides for today and for the subsequent days. Somewhere within the slide deck for day one, you'll find a link to this workspace. But also, if you haven't found that, let me show you one more time how to find it. If I were to go to my workspaces and type in quick start, or even just the word quick, into the search bar and then navigate to the public offerings, I want this workspace here, the T101 Quick Start workspace. And once I've navigated to that workspace, I'll find my public read-only version, and I want to clone that version. So I won't do it again, but I'll just show you where the button is. So you click on this three-dot button, you click on clone, give yourself a unique workspace name, and select the WDL Bootcamp 2025 billing project, and you should be good to go. So at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to make sure everybody was able to follow along with that so that we can finish out our hands-on demonstration. So go ahead and raise your hand. Oh, I'm so sorry. I accidentally linked the folder in a direct message instead of to everybody. Here you are. So that's the folder. And then, Chris, I see you don't see the billing project. Oh my. People are not able to access the public drive? Is this a more widespread problem? Oh, now I can't access it. Did I copy it wrong? Let me try that again. How about that one? Does that work for you, Anthony? Wonderful. Perfect. Yes. So I see lots of people have been able to successfully clone their workspace. If you still haven't, please send me a DM and I'll try to get you right before the end of today's demo. Okay, so this is folder. All right. So now comes the exciting part. We're actually going to go through our toy example that we've set up in this quick start demo. So just as a high-level explanation of what the toy example is about, it's not super scientifically relevant. It's really just meant to show everybody how Terra works by doing a simple averaging calculation. So the story in this workspace is that a teacher is doing a study correlating the GPA of their students with the height of their students. So if you were to go through the entire example, you'll see how it's actually an issue of sampling that creates this false sense that there's a correlation between the teacher's heights, the teacher students' heights and their GPAs. And so Terra allows you to kind of very nimbly and flexibly decide, oh, I want to run the exact same analyses on this group or that group. So that's what the toy example in here is all about. But since we're not going through the entire example, we're only going through the beginning of the example, we're not really going to focus too much on what the actual numbers tell us. We're going to, first of all, take a look at the data table just so that we understand what data we'll be pointing to, and then we're going to go directly over to our workflows so that we can see how workflows are configured and submitted. So in the data tab here, we have one single data table. That data table contains a cohort of 86 students, and those 86 students have a bunch of data that's associated with each one of them, and the only data that we're particularly interested in this case, are their GPAs. And what we're actually going to be calculating is their total GPA, and so what that means is we're going to be taking the average of their 3 GPAs within their within these specific categories. So each one of these students has a hypothetical GPA within language arts, within math, within science, and what we're going to do is calculate their total GPA. You'll see that there already is a total GPA calculated here, but we're going to produce another column which will have essentially the same data. And the way that we're going to do this is by going to our workflows, and we're going to just do 2 workflows in today's demonstration, and they're actually the exact same workflow. In the first version of the workflow is already pre-configured, so we're not going to have to think too hard about which data we're selecting. So we're going to run through this example so that everybody can get a feel for how workflows are submitted, what it kind of looks like when they're already configured, and then we're going to run the exact same workflow in this version where the configuration is not yet in place. And so then that's how we'll learn what the syntax is for actually pointing your workflows at the data in your data tab. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this workflow. This is our number 1, calculate student GPA workflow. And so first of all, you'll notice that we now have more access than we did when we were looking at all of the read-only versions of our workspaces. So for example, this is now an active drop-down menu where I can select a version for this workflow. In this case, there's only one version, but in a lot of our featured workspaces, you'll find a long list of versions in case you're interested in running an older version for whatever reason. And of course, you can always go to GitHub to find the source of the workflow. And then below that, you'll find the first option that you need to understand in order to configure the workflow. Now, by default, the option that's selected is to run our workflow inputs as defined by the data table, and this is the best practice. This is actually why Terra exists, is in order to be able to point your workflows to the data in your data table. But if that's not what you're interested in doing, either in general or for a particular workflow, you can run your workflows with your inputs defined by file paths. So if I were to select this, then here in these input values, rather than having the this dot syntax, which I'll explain shortly, here you would put GS file paths instead. And so you can have your inputs defined directly by file paths like that if you prefer. That is not what we're going to do, so we're going to run our workflows with our inputs defined by the data table. And so all that leaves us to do is to select the rows that will actually be running this workflow against. So when you have this option selected, you'll see this little box here says that first you need to select a table. And what you'll see here is under this drop-down menu, you'll see it automatically fills in whatever tables exist in your data tab. So in my data tab, there is a table called student, and there's a table called student set. So I could point this workflow at rows from either ones of these tables. I'm going to stick with student because that's what this workflow is meant to do. So I'm going to point the workflow at that table, and then I'm going to select which rows from that table I might be interested in running. So just for simplicity, I'm going to select 3 rows. I'm going to click OK. And so now I have 3 rows selected for this workflow. So down here, you'll see a few tabs that give you some more information about the workflow. First of all, in the leftmost tab, you can actually find the whittle script for this workflow. This is not an editable field, so if you want to create custom whittles, which you'll also learn about in this bootcamp, you would have to upload those in another location so that you could then surface them in Terra. But you can always go to the script in order to see what the details of the workflow that you're running are. And so in this particular case, we have a very simple workflow that literally just takes the average of 3 numbers, right? So we define our variables. We have a math score and a language score and a science score. And we also have the number of scores, which is technically the number 3. And so our command, our entire workflow is predicated on basically this one line where we add these 3 scores together and then divide by 3. And that's how we produce our average. And then we set that as an output. And here in the Inputs tab is where you can point at specific rows and columns within your data table. And we'll see exactly how this is done in the last exercise when we do the unconfigured workflow. And then you can also, in the same way, configure your outputs. So when I launch this workflow, what's going to happen is it's going to create a new column as the output location, the destination for my calculated average, and it's going to create that column within this table because this is the table that I've selected. So now that I have done all of these things, I should be able to just click launch. If I click launch, then it takes me directly to the submission history for this particular submission. So if I were to click here, for example, you could see a history of all of the submissions that I've ever run in this workspace, which at the moment is just this one. And when I click in, I can see more details. I can see how many separate submissions have happened for just this workflow. So Terra parallelizes all of its work. So I just launched this workflow against 3 different rows, and so it spins this up into 3 different parallel computations, and you can see here that they've each been submitted, and the machines are going to work on them for a little bit. It should be pretty quick because this is a very simple workflow. In fact, the only time that it's going to take up basically goes into kind of infrastructural overhead. It's going to spin up a machine, it's going to do the quick calculation, it's going to send the information back, and then we should be able to see our output. So here I'm going to pause again. I'll ask everybody to raise their hand if they've successfully followed along with me, and if you haven't, go ahead and send me a DM. Wonderful. I see lots of success. I see a question in the chat. It's a great question. Are computations for each row done on the same spun up machine or different machines? In this case, it's different machines. And that's kind of one of the powerful aspects of WDL and of the Cromwell engine. And so Terra capitalizes on these functionalities of WDL and of the Cromwell engine to make it kind of more user-friendly, more visible to the user. But yes, what's happening here is your system is detecting how many different cloud environments need to be run, how many different submissions there are, and it's doing all of that work for you. And here you can see my submissions are slowly trickling in. They're almost done. It went from submitted to running to succeeded. This one's almost done. And you can see when we go over to our data tab, we have indeed created our new output. So this is our new column that we just created. This row right here isn't quite finished calculating, but you can see that the calculations are identical to the pre-calculated ones. So if you see this, then you've done everything correctly. All right, moving right along. Feel free first of all to put down your hands, and also feel free to pipe up if you have any questions at this point. But we are just about ready for the last portion of our demonstration today, where we're going to be showing you how to actually configure these workflows. So in this case, again, we're looking at the exact same workflow, but this time our input values have not been pre-configured for us. If folks want to cheat and just go look at the previous workflow, you can. We're going to be putting the exact same things into the input values here as there are in the pre-configured version, but let me explain how that syntax actually works. So again, when we start setting up our workflow, the first thing that we do is tell Terra whether or not we want our workflow inputs to be defined by the data table or not. If we have selected this option, then we also need to make sure that we know which data table we're pointing at, and we can go ahead and select whatever number of rows we want. I'll go ahead just for fun and select all of them. And now we are at the stage where, in the previous example, we could have gone ahead and launched our workflow. But you'll notice that the launch button is grayed out, and we have this little warning here that tells us that we have not finished configuring our inputs. And indeed, all of these required inputs are blank. And so what we're going to do is we're going to point them at different columns within our data table. And the syntax for this is very simple. You just write this dot and then the name of the column within the table that you have selected. So we've selected the student table, and within that student table, these are the column names. So we can select any one of these column names as the input for our workflow, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to type in this dot, and then I want to find the column that most closely corresponds to the variable that is named here. So our three variables that we're going to deal with first are our language arts score, our math score, and our science score. According to our data table, these are named like so: GPA underscore language arts, GPA underscore maths, GPA underscore science. So we're going to go ahead and type in this dot, and we can actually find an autocomplete, so it's nice and easy for us. We don't even have to type it all the way out because it auto-completes from the available options. So I type in this.gpa language arts. And by the way, you'll notice that this warning that we have not configured this input still persists. It will persist until I click save. So once I click save, now I have locked in this input value. So now my warning here disappears, and I have to complete the rest. So let's first finish these ones. So we want maths here, and we want science here. So this dot GPA underscore science. I'm going to save that. So now we have these three configured. And these are three floating numbers. They're just the numbers that are contained within these columns. And then we need one last value. And so we could have just hardwired this value directly into the script. You know, in the script, we could just say, take these three values and divide them by 3. But just to make things a little bit more interesting and to show the functionality of Terra a little bit more closely, instead of just making it an integer within the WDL script, we decided to make that integer one of the workspace data key value pairs. And so in this case, we're going to use this key value pair right here. So the number of classes is the name of the variable, and the value of that is 3, because we're talking about the language arts class, the math class, and the science class. And so we've kind of hardwired this value right here, just as a demonstration of how workspace data works. But again, you could do this with a value, you could do this with a file, you could do this with whatever it is that might be useful to do across different workflows, across different data tables, so that you don't have to have the number 3 reflected, for example, in this case, in every single row of the student table. So in order to do that, the syntax is just ever so slightly different. Instead of writing this dot, we write workspace dot. So workspace dot will point to the key value pairs in the workspace data section. And in this case, there were 2 key value pairs there. And the one that we're interested in this case is the one called number classes. So number underscore classes, which technically just corresponds to the number 3. And so now if you want to check against the previous example that we just ran, you'll see it works the exact same way. And now we are able to launch this workspace, or this workflow. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click launch. And you can see I selected my whole 86 student cohort, partly because that's how the toy example works. We want to show people, oh, this is the average that you get if you only grab a couple of students, and then this is what you get if you do your whole cohort, so that you aren't experiencing any undersampling artifacts. And so you can see again here, we've parallelized this workflow to run on 86 separate environments. And so at this point, I'm going to pause again and ask people to raise their hands if they successfully were able to run this. Oh, I see a question. I see a great question. I'm so sorry. I glazed over that. In the Outputs tab, you basically do the exact same thing with the exact same syntax. So if I wanted, in this case, it decides that it's optional. It'll just create that data. But if I want to name it something specific, let's say I wanted to name it new final GPA. Now, this is how the platform will know what column it wants the outputs to show up in and what that column's name should be. So I can go ahead and do that. Click save. I'll select, let's say in this case, I'll just select one row. Let me do this one. It's all the way at the top. Select that one. And okay, now it should all be saved. And I'm going to click launch. Yes, thank you so much. That's a great question. In this case, because we didn't select a new output location, the output location will overwrite the old output location. So by default, it assumes that the column that all of these calculations are supposed to go into is the total GPA column. But if I don't want it to overwrite my old column, then what I can do is set the output location with a new name, and then once that actually succeeds, once it goes through, then we should be able to see a new column pop up all the way over here. Hasn't come up yet, unless, oh wait. Yeah, it hasn't come up yet. I see a question. How are the configurations of the instances running the workflow determined? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Let me try to respond. So the configurations correspond to whatever configuration you had when you clicked launch. So when you submit the workflow, then every one of the parallel versions of that workflow runs on effectively the same configuration, but once for each different row. Does that answer your question? Wonderful. All right, so that's great timing. We've come to the end of today's demonstration. If you're interested in kind of finishing out the toy example, please feel free. You're going to retain access to this billing project for the coming week. So you can finish out this example. You can read in the dashboard what the how that final example works, and there are also links to more detailed documentation about this tutorial. Just briefly, the final workflow in this quick start workspace is supposed to help you use the set table. So it's just a slightly more advanced version of the exact same demonstration in which you see how you're supposed to point at a set of rows while also grabbing data from the tables from which those sets are created. So it's a slightly more complicated version of the same demonstration. Again, you can find lots of recordings of this demo if that's what's most interesting to you. Or you can always send us a message and we'll walk you through it. So with that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any additional questions. And I'm going to ask that everyone please complete our survey for today's bootcamp session. Let me grab the link for that. You can find the link in the slide deck. You can find it actually both at the beginning and the end of the slide deck. Make sure that you use the link for the current day, because each day has a different survey. So if folks would be so kind as to give us whatever feedback you like in this survey, it would be very appreciated. We find it very useful. We're always curating and changing these boot camps in order to make sure that we're delivering the information that people want, that we're doing it at the rate that people find most educational. So please let us know how we did. And yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. So we have about 5 minutes left on our time, and I'm just going to open up the floor to any questions anyone might have. See a question in this demo running time. It seems too long for this type of calculation. Is it normal with real computation? So if you're asking why it takes so long to just produce an average of three numbers, that's a great question. And yeah, it has to do entirely with the cloud infrastructure aspect of it. So there's this overhead just for spinning up machines and for sending the submission and returning the submission. And exactly as you said, in this case, the example is extremely simple. And so the calculation itself takes, an instant. But it's all that overhead time in order to spin up the machines and to return the information and put it into the output column. That's the part that kind of takes a little bit longer. But in the case of real world workflows, that part is actually negligible compared to what the workflow is actually doing, because those workflows are much more complicated. And I see, Bob, you still have a hand raised. I don't know if you have a question, but feel free to unmute and ask your question or post it in the chat. All right, well, I see there are not very many other questions. So if any other questions come up, please feel free to send those directly to dsp-workshops@broadinstitute.org. We'll be posting recordings of this session next week if you want to review it. And we'll see everybody here tomorrow for our introduction to Docker. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining.